and with my careers and employability hat, okay, in the School of History, Politics and International Relations. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the types of careers that some of our students can go into, and careers more broadly in the humanities. And then at about 20 past, 25 past, hopefully, if everything works, we'll have a couple of our alumni come along, and they'll be able to answer some of your questions. So you get to speak to some students, and we have you also did politics and international relations here, so perhaps you can answer a few questions as well if you're still around. Okay, so we have some people, and obviously I'm happy to answer questions, and I'll stay behind a little bit after 12:45 if anybody wants to come and speak to me. Okay, so I'm going to start off with two student stories. Okay, these are my students. Okay, and the first one is several years ago, well before COVID. I had a student come to my class, and she said, "I need next week off. I've got to go down to London. I've got an internship at the Times." Well, I was like, "Oh, that sounds pretty good." So I let her go, and she spent the weekend at the Times. So she came back, and she'd been to the BAFTAs. She'd met Stephen Fry. She was like, "I had a fantastic time. It's brilliant." And everybody else was really jealous. And then about 2 weeks later, she got a job at the Times. And she said, "I just got to get my 2-1, and then I'm going to go and work at the Times." And what happened was she'd spent a year in the United States, in New York, and she'd worked for an entertainment paper in New York while she was on her year abroad. And she'd come back and she got her internship, and then she was able to go and work in London and go and do all sorts of exciting things. And then, of course, she never got in touch with me again, and because she was having far too much fun in London. Okay, so that's one kind of student. Another student, a guy called Eric, is from Hong Kong, and he came and he studied with me. He did all sorts of courses with me because I teach Chinese history. And when he finished, he went to do a master's back in Hong Kong. He applied to do various PhD programs and was unsuccessful in getting funding, unfortunately. And he had to leave Hong Kong with his now wife because he, as you probably know, there's been quite a lot of political changes in Hong Kong, and he was involved supporting some of the protesters. And so he's now settled in the UK, and he works in the international office for the University of Sussex, helping the University of Sussex get students. And the point is to always expect the unexpected with the humanities. Okay, all right. Students will do the most weird and amazing things. They might come to university thinking they're going to do one thing, but they definitely want to be a lawyer, and something happens at their university. It could be something to do with their course, it could be something to do with another experience that they have, and they go and do something completely different. Okay, and I could tell you another 10 or 20 stories quite happily, and I've been teaching here for well over 10 years, and all of my colleagues who've been teaching here can tell you exactly the same thing. So that's the first thing to say, and we actually have plenty of data, and so you can see here are some of the various jobs that our students have gone into over the years. Okay, and this leads me into kind of talking about this false dichotomy, I think, between the STEM and the humanities. And I think there's been this has been I think the idea for a very long time that STEM subjects kind of get you into jobs, and that's where the jobs are. Okay, right, and it's the hard skills of science and technology that will kind of get you into a job. But actually, we know that many companies value what are often called the soft skills, right? Okay, that the humanities teach you, right? And we know that this is the case for tech companies, and it's the case for pharmaceutical companies. It's the case for all sorts of different jobs.
Sorry to interrupt. I just realised we've not actually shared the slides on Teams, so we'll quickly share that now.
That's okay. All right then. Okay, so I think that the idea that students who are doing humanities degrees are somehow Can you share the slides again? Sorry, on a. It's fine. Sorry about that. So I think the idea that students who are doing humanities degrees, that they're setting themselves up in some way that they're not going to succeed in the workplace as much as students who do STEM subjects is simply wrong. And that's what we found over many years of being here. That's what I found over many years of being here. Okay, and I think most importantly, I think no student should be prevented from doing something that they love because of a perception that they need to go and do something else to get a job. Okay, right? The most important thing, I think, for a student coming to university is that they are happy. Because if they are not happy, it doesn't matter what subject they are doing, they will not succeed to their full potential. And this is what I have told students in open days, I have told their parents, and I have had students in my office again and again over the years. And one of the most important things is that I ask them about how their degree is going is, are you happy in Leicester? Have you found your friends? Are you happy with your accommodation? Are you happy with what else you are doing? And the ones who say that they are happy are the ones who are succeeding to their full potential. The ones who say that something is going wrong, something is happening, those are the ones very often we have to step in and we have to look at the various support that the university has to offer. And that may be something to do with what's happening at Leicester, it may be something to do with what's happening at home. Our students have lives and they go through the same life experiences that any young people go through. Okay, all right? So I don't think that what happens when you get out of university and the discussion of what students want to do when they get out of university should necessarily always guide our discussions about what they're going to study at university. And indeed, many students don't actually know what they want to do when they come to university. And we know this because we survey them when they come here, right? Okay, so in both history and Pol-IR, the majority of students don't really know what they want to do. And that's fine, okay? They're 18 years old. I'm pretty sure I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was 18 years old either. All right, some do. Some have a very definitive idea, and that's fantastic if they do. Okay, all right, and if they then go and achieve that dream, and we're part of that, that's absolutely brilliant. Obviously, by the time they finish, as our data shows, more know what they want to do, and that's great, and they should do, okay, because they've matured while they're at university, and obviously we have a lot of career support to help them. But actually, the data still shows that a significant minority of our students are still deciding what they want to do as they get into year 3, okay, and that is fine as well, right? Because some of our students won't find their vocation until they get into the mid-20s or the late 20s. Okay, all right, I didn't find my vocation until a little bit later on, and it took me several years of wandering around the world, notably China, until I got into this kind of academic game. Okay, right, so I think that we need to be quite careful about how much we emphasize this specific career to our students, particularly when they're kind of 18. The most important thing should be, here is history, or here is politics, or here is law, or here is English, and these are the transferable skills that the humanities gives you, right? Okay, here is how you can use what you're going to learn, both the content, but also the skills of communication, right? Written and oral, and students always improve their communication when they're here, right? I don't think I've seen one student in over 10 years who hasn't improved their essay writing skills. So the foundation that you will give them in school, okay, when they come, we then take that and they always improve their written skills, okay? Their oral communication skills, there's an awful lot of time spent doing presentation work, doing group work, persuading, giving students opportunities to speak in kind of small group teaching across the arts and humanities, so that when they go out into the world of work, they're confident in speaking in all sorts of different environments, okay? And we emphasize group work, and some of our students kind of, I'm not quite sure why I want to do group work. We have this, because some students don't participate in the group. So students, so now and again, a student will complain, well, this X student didn't really participate, they didn't really do anything. So I don't want to do group work. And we have to say, well, hang on a second, this is what would happen in the world of work, right? When you have to work in a team, okay? And you have to manage who does what in the team. And that is kind of a really good transferable skill when you do group work to produce a presentation about something, okay? All right, and we do group work in many, many different ways, all right? Critical analysis, you know about this. When a student reads a reading, when they read an article, when they look at a source, when they're dealing with a debate, okay, those skills of critical analysis are incredibly valued in multiple workplaces. Okay. Something like history or politics or law teaches the ability to make connections across complex ideas, right? And a very simple way to kind of think about that is doing comparative history. Okay, so I teach in my third year, I teach World War II in East Asia. Okay, right, and we teach and one of the essay questions that I have is, was the Nanjing Massacre a Holocaust? So in Nanjing in 1937, 1938, 300,000 people were killed by the Japanese, and we compare that with the Holocaust, and we say, right, so what happened in Nanjing that looks like, it might have been a Holocaust, that looks genocidal, and how might you compare that with what happened in Germany? Okay, so we're asking students to make connections across different times and spaces, and they can take that into the world of work very well. And then other skills which are embedded in the degree in multiple ways. Self-management is incredibly important. Students have to deal with kind of multiple deadlines. They have to deal with different types of work that they're being asked to do, particularly in their final year. They'll be asked to do in history, they'll be asked to do a 10,000 word dissertation, which takes them over a year to do. We start preparing them right now. This is the second year students are going to start sending me, the ones who've chosen to do China, going to start sending me kind of their research proposals and think about what they're going to do over this summer. And then my third year students are just writing up, and they're going to submit it right at the end of April, and they're panicking because they've got to finish writing 10,000 words. But they've got to, students have to manage their time over the entire, 12 months or so, including when they're not potentially at Leicester. They have to think about where they're going to find sources. So they're going to have to go are they going to have to kind of leave Leicester? Sometimes they have to go to the National Archives or the British Library. How they're going to do stuff online. So they have to manage that long piece of work, but at the same time, they will have their essays. They will have their other things that they have to do. And so there's a lot of kind of self-management, a lot of time management. And then they have to kind of think about all the other things that they're doing in their lives, which you would expect also when they go out into the world of work. Okay. And then really important as well, I think, empathy and recognizing different points of view. It's no surprise that Leicester is a very multicultural university. It's a multicultural city, okay? And we have many of our students come from around Leicester and around Leicestershire, and they reflect the multi-ethnic and the multi-cultural nature of the city. But a lot of our students come from London, a lot of our students come from elsewhere in the UK. And so they are kind of put into this new environment that they didn't really know anything about. Okay, so I have one student in my second year, so in my third year module, who's from the Falkland Islands. Okay, so over Christmas he went back and he kind of spent a couple of days in a cabin with some penguins because he wanted some time alone. And I have another student in my second year who's from the Cayman Islands. Okay, so both of those students come from places where there are very small numbers of people, and they've come to a place where there's 350,000 people, and it's an incredibly multi-ethnic place. So these are incredibly different experiences that these students are getting. Okay, and they meet all sorts of students from around the country and indeed around the world, and they have to recognize the different points of view that they have, because they're often talking about quite difficult and controversial things. Okay, all right, so it could be something I've just talked about, was the Nanjing Massacre a Holocaust? There are different points of view about that, but if you think about all the potential debates that students can have, all the things that they can be discussing in university, and they have to do that in a way that respects other people's points of view, that allows people to speak, okay, that doesn't shut anybody down, which you need to do in many ways in the world of work. Okay. And we know graduates do. We have quite a lot of data. Okay, so civil service is fairly standard, and one of our alumni in a few minutes is working for the civil service. We have a lot of students working in politics and policy in various areas. That's not just in the UK. We have students who go and work with the EU. We have students who go and work with the United Nations. Okay, journalism. Well, you've already heard the story about my student at the beginning. I have no idea if she's still working in journalism. Well, that's okay. Teaching is a fairly standard route for many of our students. And in history, we actually have a module called Teaching in the Classroom, where our students get the opportunity to spend some time in a classroom to work out whether it's something that they really want to do. Okay, law, it's not just law students who go into law. Students who study things like history can then go on to a conversion course, and law is incredibly popular at the moment. Many students go and work in finance, the ones who want, the real money. Okay, all right. And every year I have a student who's got a job in finance, and I always ask them, "Can you invite me onto your yacht when you make your millions?" And it's not happened yet. Not one of them has written back and said, "Toby, please come onto my yacht." It's not happened. Okay, marketing and PR, it's fairly obvious, right? Why students who take courses in the humanities might go into those jobs. And then NGOs and charities, lots of NGOs and charities. Okay, that's really, the third sector is really important. And many students get experience doing internships while they're at university. Often they have opportunities through the student union to get involved in that kind of work as well, and then they're able to use that experience to then go and work in NGOs and charities. And again, not just in the UK, that can be international as well. We have data on what our students are doing when they finish. So this is across the University of Leicester. So 15 months after graduation, we have something like 50% of students work full-time, some work part-time. A lot of them continue into further study. Okay, all right. So we have a lot of students will go and do master's degrees, and every single year, I think every single colleague and myself have to write references for students who are going to do that. So I've just written one reference for a student who spent time in Korea and wants to go and study a master's in Korea, and that student from the Falkland Islands wants to go and do a master's degree in Taiwan. And I've just written a reference for that. Whether that's because he took my course, which involved the history of Taiwan, I'm not entirely sure, but that's fine with me. And he'll be, if he gets in, he'll be going to the same university as my wife. My wife's Taiwanese, so that'd be interesting. So yes, we get lots of students who go and continue to do work in study, and it's not necessarily that something that they do immediately when they finish their degree. We might have students who go and they'll work perhaps in a variety of roles. They might go abroad for a bit, and then after a year or 2 years they'll come back and they'll come back to me and they'll say, "Now I want to do a master's degree. Can you write me a reference?" Normally in a similar area. So normally if I have a history student, they'll go and do something in history, but they might do something in politics and international relations. They might end up doing something a bit more teaching, for example. Okay, so you don't have to, if you do history, you don't have to kind of follow further study in history. It does happen, but it also opens up the range in other kind of similar subject areas. I don't think there are many students who do history and then do masters in physics. Okay, I think that would be a bit of a swerve, a bit of a curveball. And we do have a few students who then go on and do PhDs. And I have had the odd student who has gone all the way through at Leicester, done a PhD, and is now an academic. And we have a bit of data on again, further data on the type of work for those who are in employment. And you can see that this is a little bit broader than the data I showed you earlier. And it does include some aspects in terms of engineering and building design and that kind of stuff as well. Okay, but again, you can see just the range of careers that you can get by doing a humanities degree. And also we know a little bit more about the types of course that people are doing. So most of our students will do a master's degree first, some sort of postgraduate diploma. That's normally PGCE. I know that the teacher training is starting to change, but there will be further teacher training there. And of course, there are professional qualifications. You don't have to do a master's degree. There are professional qualifications in accountancy, law, etc., etc. Okay, so I think one of the most important things to kind of say is that a humanities degree opens many, many doors. All right, okay, and that's one of the most important things that we emphasize to students when they come, and continue to emphasize that and continue to help them to find the door that they particularly want to walk through. But we all know that there are challenges, okay, right? There are challenges in the world of work, and we know that the narrative that students often get fed is that the humanities isn't perhaps worth as much as STEM subjects. And we know that then some of the narrative that has come out of government policy over the years has really been to focus on STEM subjects. This is not a new discussion, right? Okay, people have been talking about the importance of these hardcore subjects for decades, going right back into the 20th century. So these discussions about whether the humanities are valuable to get jobs is something that will continue, I think, as long as we are around in education. And one of the new challenges is artificial intelligence. And I use artificial intelligence in my teaching, and I'm one of the few colleagues in my department who has an artificial intelligence assessment. And I think that artificial intelligence is arguably the most transformative piece of tech I've seen in terms of education since the internet. I could be completely wrong about that, but I thought that I might talk about it just for a couple of minutes, because I think it's interesting to think about how, as educators, one of the things that we have to do is kind of engage with potential changes to the world, because we have to send our students out into that world. And I feel, and I might be completely wrong, that AI is likely to be quite significant in many of those jobs that I put up on a previous slide. So I asked artificial intelligence what were the challenges, the humanities and the challenges of AI. I used several LLMs as a basis for the next few slides. So there are huge opportunities, I think, for our humanities students in terms of artificial intelligence, because it allows them to be incredibly creative, and it allows, using AI in the classroom allows me to be creative in ways that I simply simply was not able to do 18 months ago. Okay, AI requires communicating effectively. Getting a prompt right is incredibly important, and it's actually really difficult. When I kind of talk to my students about AI, I basically say it's like talking to my 7-year-old son. Okay, all right, I'll get like 5 minutes of kind of focused conversation out of them, and then he'll go off on a tangent and want to talk about something else. Okay, right, that's what talking to an LLM is like. Okay, so I say that all of the skills of critical analysis, reading, summary, they help students to engage with AIs. And AIs are ultimately ingrained in society. They're trained on society. They are biased. They are unfair. There are all sorts of interesting issues around that. Okay, and so understanding society allows, I think, our students to use AI and face the challenges of AI in the future. Nevertheless, AI does produce challenges. It is changing the landscape, particularly if you're in Silicon Valley. It's probably not changing the landscape in the UK quite as much, but a recent PwC survey at Davos said over 40% of CEOs in the UK are using or thinking of using AI tools. Okay, so this is kind of where this comes from. This comes from some of the data that's coming out of employability, right? Okay, if you're in Silicon Valley, there's a reasonable chance that AI tools are already starting to change your job in significant ways. We're a bit behind the curve in the UK, but we'll probably get there. All right, so we've got to kind of think about, right, how do our students do that? There is a technical skills gap. Okay, whenever a new technology comes on, we've got to think about how do we prepare our students, how do we train our students to do that. That was the same with the internet. That was the same, and that will be the same with AI. Okay, and for some people, there will be competing with AI-generated content. And there are all sorts of very complicated issues around that, issues of copyright, issues of bias. Okay, all right. And that will work in some areas and not in others. These are not the only challenges that our students face. I'll talk about them in just a second. Okay, right? And these are some of the examples of jobs that were created by AI that I found that I went to kind of search. So AI is already creating new jobs, and in the same way that the internet created new jobs 20 odd years ago when the internet first became 25 years ago, and it was a big thing. Okay, right, and I thought that I would have a bit of fun and get AI to try to produce an image which which captured some of what I've been talking about. And I would say, finally, to kind of close, that AI is not the only challenge that our students have. They have challenges with the cost of living. They have challenges with their well-being. Okay, right? They have many other challenges that we, as our institutions, have to prepare them for. Okay, right? But I would say, I've come back to the point that I've made time and time again. The most important thing is that our students are happy and that they are doing something that they find relatively enjoyable most of the time, even when it's cold and they can't be bothered to get out of bed and come to a seminar. And if they're doing that, then they will succeed at university, and then there is a very good chance that they will succeed in other areas of their lives. So thank you very much. And hopefully we've got 2 students online.
Hi.
We have, brilliant. Hi Maya, hi Joshua.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
Okay, hi Joshua. So so thank you very much, Maya and Joshua, for agreeing to be here. Can I ask you just to give you just kind of a quick 1-minute introduction to who you are, what happened since you've been at Leicester, and let's go, Maya, let's go and start ladies first. Let's go with you first, if that's okay, Joshua.
Hi, thanks for having me. So since I finished at Leicester, I took a little bit of time out at first actually, and I went straight into waitressing. I just really wanted to think about what I wanted to do after university. And I think that the thing that Leicester drummed into me was like authenticity. So for me, I didn't just want a job, or I didn't want just a career that that makes money and that makes that can pay the bills, because realistically you can find a lot of jobs that can do that. And what I wanted to do is find something that felt realistic to me and it felt really authentic. So after waitressing, I went straight into a master's degree in political science in China. So I did a lot of like research and a lot of like personal development, I would say. And I looked mostly into like my own heritage. So I did a lot of research around China. And I actually did a lot of like research around adoptees from China. So I was adopted from China, and I came from Changsha Orphanage. So I did a lot of like kind of demographic history and a lot of like population research around the kind of people that I am. And I ended up doing my dissertation on that, and had one of the best in the year's cohorts. And then after that, I felt like I really needed to like earn some money. So I went into job to job, and I really didn't find it difficult to find jobs. What I found from Leicester, my humanities degrees, was I had a lot of transferable skills from them. It meant that I could talk to people, I could research a lot. It meant I could really go into like a lot of research projects and project management in general. So I'm currently working at a completely unrelated subject in lighting. So I'm in marketing and sales at the moment. I actually turned over $1 million for the company last year. But a lot of that was from the skills I had from my humanities degrees. It meant I could like just have effective communication and have that cultural understanding of different cultures and different societies. And what I'm actually working up to is a PhD from the University of Durham to go back into education. So I think one of the things that I want to say about like moving on from university is that it really didn't like deter me from moving into different jobs and different careers. And I think the best thing about humanities in particular is that it does give you that flexibility and thought, and it does give you that kind of open-ended like journey. Like a degree is something that something that no one could take away from you, definitely. And with the knowledge that you have from your degree, it can take you quite a lot of places. And of course, like I'm not saying that you need a degree to kind of have that flexibility and thought, but what it does is it builds a really strong foundation of where you can go, and the possibilities do seem a little bit endless.
Okay, great. Thank you very much indeed, Maya. Joshua, if you want to do a quick introduction, and then we'll see if there are any questions from the audience. Thank you, Joshua.
Thank you very much. So I was at the University of Leicester graduating in 2019. I did my dissertation on an analysis of investments of insurance firms at the turn of the century, which is a real passion project for me. I then went down to London and I did a Master of Science in Empires, Colonialism and Globalization. And from there, I traveled to Girona in Catalonia, or Spain, to teach English and history with the British Council. And I built teaching material around some of the topics that I'd learned at Leicester. I returned to London thereafter, and I took up a position at the Department for Business and Trade, also known as the Department of International Trade at the time. It had a little bit of a rebrand. And I worked on the UK's intellectual property trade negotiations teams on agreements with the Gulf Cooperation Council and Switzerland, and I developed a specialism in geographical indications. So things like champagne, or closer to home, Melton Mowbray pork pies, which are delicious, of course. Education at Leicester gave me skills in analysis, argument, and research, which were crucial to this role. And then since the end of last year, I've led a very, very small, tiny team in labour, anti-corruption, climate and environment, also known as LACE, on compliance, monitoring and implementation of agreements. Thank you very much.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Joshua and Maya. So we have about 15 minutes for questions. And if you have questions, particularly for our two alumni, please let me know and I will relay them. Yes.
I'd be interested to know what degrees were
The two alumni.
Yeah.
So Maya did history, and Joshua, it was politics and international relations, right?
No, I did history as well.
Two historians. There we go. So that's two very different career paths from history. Any other questions? Don't be shy. Yes.
How did they find this opportunity? Because obviously, let's say when you are looking for jobs, it's different when you hire a mechanical engineer. It's more solid and defined. But these kind of jobs, it's more difficult to search for. So I would like to know if they have any tips to share.
Yep. Okay. So Maya and Joshua, the question is about how you went out and found your jobs. Kind of the mechanic. Did you go through recruitment agencies? Did you use specific sites? And the question is coming from the perspective that if you want to be a mechanical engineer, you simply search for mechanical engineers. But obviously, the career paths that you've taken have involved multiple jobs, and kind of how did you what were some of the logistics of looking for those? So if we start with Maya and then Joshua.
Sure. So one of my skills, I would say, is networking. And so I have found a lot of jobs through just knowing people and just getting my name out there in the communities that I'm in, and also by other people putting my name forward. I do realize that that's not like the I guess the most pragmatic solution for everyone, especially undergraduates who don't know how to utilize their communities. So I would say at least nurturing those kind of relationships, and try and get in touch with alumni from the university, and trying to just build the networks where you can, especially in a professional environment. And from things like part-time jobs at like waitressing and things like that, like you're bound to come across people that have kind of the same interests as you. Like Toby said, there are a lot of recruitment agencies, and there are a lot of those kind of things for recent graduates, and I have found that quite a useful strategy to find graduate jobs as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Maya. Joshua?
Thank you very much. So in terms of finding opportunities, I was made aware at my time at Leicester of opportunities in the civil service, politics, teaching, etc. I also utilised the careers service at Leicester to tailor my CV, and they provided me with some advice. I then applied for the English Language Assistant programme through the British Council's website. And in terms of the civil service, I applied directly through the civil service jobs website. I think it's sometimes a forgotten about route that you can apply via the fast stream, but also there are direct entry as well. So that's how I did that. Thank you.
Okay, so creating a network. I think some of our students build LinkedIn profiles as well. LinkedIn seems to be a way in which to create create a network too. Are there any other questions for our two?
I was just going to say, I just wanted to add on to that, if you don't mind. One of my experiences from this department, both incredibly positive, but hopefully that is reflected university-wide in the UK. It's very much just like yourselves, you will work with young people on a day-to-day, and you get invested in those young people, and lecturers very much are exactly the same. And when I was doing my degree, my dissertation supervisor often passed lots of opportunities on to say, like, oh, by the way, there's this out there, there's this organisation out there, because it was her field of expertise, and she knew a lot more about it. She also knew that I was really interested in those areas. So that was another way of opportunities being passed to the students, where it's just invested lecturers and teaching support. And like I said, I certainly found that at my time at Leicester, and hopefully that's reflected across all universities in the UK.
Yeah, I think it's well known that I am the person to go to if you want to go and teach English in East Asia specifically. And in fact, I've had many discussions with Mayor over the years about China. Yes.
If you proposed to keep that on their radar when they were doing GCSE A-levels, working in that sector that they're currently working in, or have that not been open door that sector, not necessarily the job title, just more of the sector that they're in.
Right. Okay. So the question, Mayor and Joshua, is whether you had thought about these kind of sectors, these kind of career opportunities when you were doing your GCSEs and A-levels, or if these were opportunities and decisions that you took advantage of, and decisions that you made while you were at university. So Mayor first again, then Joshua.
Sure. I think while I was doing my GCSEs and A-levels, I didn't really know what was out there. And I think that at that age, you only know what's around you. So from like your parents or your parents' friends or like your peers, and those kind of things. And I think that the best thing to do at university is just figure out what's out there. And you don't know what you don't know. So I definitely think that the best thing is just to keep an open mind. And whilst I know that there's a lot of push to kind of figure out what you want to do when you're in your GCSEs or your A-levels, I still think that even in your 20s, you don't know what you want to do forever. You don't know what you're passionate about. I think that's the time when you build the foundation of what your passions are and where you build your interests. But I just think that there's so many ways to incorporate your interests in a career that works for you. And that's a lifelong journey. Like that doesn't stop at any age, really.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Joshua.
Thank you. It was something perhaps slightly on my radar. I was a fan of Yes Minister, so the idea of working with government officials sounded quite appealing. But I think my focus was exploring my passion for history, and then seeing what sort of opportunities would arise in relation to that. So using those skills that I mentioned, sort of research, argumentation, analysis. And yeah, the civil service came up again and again, and that's something that I decided to pursue.
Did you have outreach at Leicester on your kind of bingo card when you were at A-level?
Very nostalgic, and I was very much one of the students where first year did not do it, second year did not do it, third year still figuring out what I was doing. Outreach did become on get on my radar while I was at university, because I very much did it as a part-time job as the ambassadors that you will have seen walk around the facility. So yeah, when I got to graduation, my two options were either outreach or anti-corruption. Very different jobs and very different directions to go into, but I chose outreach and absolutely love it. But it only came on my radar third year at university.
But anti-corruption was based on your dissertation research, and outreach was based on your student ambassador experience. So both potential career opportunities were career opportunities because you had an experience at university, one intellectual and academic, and one kind of more work-based and working with potential students.
Why it was really difficult is because both were incredibly positive experiences. I absolutely loved the work I did as a student at Leicester and working outreach, and I actually loved my degree. So yeah, it was a nice problem to have.
Okay, we've got a couple more minutes left. Any more questions for our students or questions for me?
Got one over here too.
Yes.
Not for the students, but I was just intrigued to follow the image that came up, the AI image, actually what we've been speaking about. Just the lack of ethnic diversity in the images.
That's based on what the AI has been trained on. Okay, so we know that some large language models have biases, and in fact, Google got completely taken to task on one of those. I did a slide for people who do admissions open days, and the image I asked for it was a history professor teaching AI, and it gave me a black professor with robot hands. Okay, so there the AI has done something completely weird. Okay, so, and this is something that I discuss with my students when I do certain tasks. So when I'm kind of exploring issues of kind of British colonialism abroad, I get them to kind of use the AI to create, to imagine kind of particular scenarios, create kind of narratives of kind of going to Shanghai in the 1930s, for example, and creating a guidebook. And we get to kind of explore the language, right? Who is the AI created for? Is it created for local Chinese people? Is it created for kind of British colonialists? And I use the AI to explore these issues and as a point of departure for debate, which you could also. I didn't spend a lot of time doing the image. I wouldn't consider myself an expert on creating images with AI, and it takes. You do need to know quite a lot. It's almost like taking a director role. If you look at kind of the prompts that you need to create really good images, and I'm much better with text-based LLMs. But if I was doing this in class, then, and I have used image AIs in class, then we do discuss these things, and it is always a point of discussion. You don't just accept what an LLM is giving you. You always kind of question the sources, fact check what's going on, and as you say, where bias comes up, then you sit down and you say, right, well, this is obviously, what is the subjectivity here that it's doing it? Can we go and get information about what's happening? And that is a conversation that's happening in the space, and is happening in universities as we work out how to teach LLMs, how to engage with this technology. And that's what we're here to do at university. Mary, you've got your hand up.
I do. I just wanted to raise a point. So, as an ethnic minority myself, and I also use a lot of AI in my own work. I did a lot of AI marketing as well as other things. One of the best analogies that I would use for AI at the moment is that it doesn't do the work for you, but it's more like having a calculator. So my partner is a mathematician, and they literally use a calculator every single day. That's exactly how I would describe using AI. As long as you put the input into the AI and you give it what you want, you don't have to take the data that it gives you as from face value. You can manipulate it just like you would with the data from a calculator. So that's how I would describe using AI, and I'm not sure if that's a helpful comment or.
It's super helpful, Mayor, because you're using AI and your partner's using AI, and I'm teaching students that I think they might need to use it in the future. So that's super helpful. Are there any final questions for our two alumni before we let them go back to their lives and their jobs on a Friday afternoon? No? Well, I will be around so you can come and talk to me after this. Thank you very much indeed, Joshua and Mayor. We'll let you go. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much for all your help. Thank you very much for that.
Thanks very much. Yeah. No, so I believe it is lunch now, which I'm sure you'll all be thrilled to hear. So yeah, if you guys want to head out.